Hi, welcome back. Now, when we first started this portion of the course, International Business Transactions, we were talking about contracting systems, and we said a contracting system must do three things. First of all, it must tell us what is a valid contract, and that's what we covered in the last module. In this module, we'll turn to the second element, which is to say, how do we know when a party has performed according to the terms of the contract? And then finally, talking about breach. What do we do if a party fails to perform? So in this lecture, we're going to look at the performance and breach of contract, the failure to perform regarding the international sale of goods. Now, we know that each party to a contract has obligations. The primary responsibility of the seller is to deliver conforming goods in the manner specified within the contract, meaning the seller must deliver conforming goods. The primary responsibility of the buyer is to take delivery and pay the price for the goods. Now, if a party fails to perform, in other words, breaches the agreement, the non-breaching party is entitled to seek a remedy. And the remedy is designed to put the non-breaching party in the same position it would have been in had the contract been performed. And we'll be talking a lot about that throughout the remedies and damages portion of the course. So keep that in mind. Our remedy is going to be based on where would the non-breaching party be had the contract actually been carried out. So in this lecture, we're going to look at how buyers and sellers perform contracts, as well as the remedies available if either party fails to perform. So let's start with performance of the contract. As I said, there are certain primary responsibilities of the parties to the contract. The seller must deliver conforming goods. The buyer must pay the purchase price. When we are talking about performance, it really comes down to three elements, which is to say delivery. Did the seller deliver as was called for in the contract? Conformity. Did the goods conform to the terms specified in the contract? And then finally, payment. Did the buyer pay for the goods as specified in the contract? So when we are looking at did a party perform, a seller performs by delivering conforming goods. A buyer performs by taking delivery of the goods and paying for the goods. And so these are the three things we'll look at when deciding has a party performed their obligations under a contract. Let's start with delivery. There's a lot of issues related to delivery, of course. When is delivery accomplished? Again, the parties can always decide for themselves, as we talked about in the section on standard contract terms, Incoterms. The parties can always decide for themselves. But if they do not have it set out in the contract, we turn to the contracting system. The CISG Article 30 says the seller has to deliver the goods, hand over any documents that relate to them, and transfer the property in the goods. In an international sale, what does a seller have to do to satisfy its delivery obligation? And again, we come back to that same notion. If the contract of sale involves carriage of the goods, then the seller must hand over the goods to the first carrier for transmission to the buyer. So delivery in a contract like this is accomplished by the seller giving the goods to the first carrier. So it is just as if the seller delivered the goods to the buyer when it comes to legal responsibilities. So the seller, he accomplishes delivery when the goods are placed in the hands of the first carrier. Again, the parties can always decide for themselves when does delivery occur, but if it's not in the contract, then we look to Article 31 when the goods are placed in the hands of the first carrier. Now, there are issues related to conformity. A seller must deliver the goods that were specified in the contract. And the CISG says the seller has to deliver goods which are of the quantity, quality, and description required by the contract. And furthermore, those goods must be packaged in a manner required by the contract. Now, whenever we talk about conformity and a guarantee of conformity, what we are really addressing is the idea of a warranty. You probably never thought about warranty. What does warranty mean? Well, warranty essentially means it is a guarantee that the parties conform to the terms of the contract. They are of the quantity, quality, and description set out in the contract. So warranty is about conformity. Do the goods conform? Now, the goods do not conform with the contract unless, first, they are fit for the purpose for which goods of the same description would ordinarily be used. Now, we have this same concept, this warranty, in the UCC and the common law. And this warranty says that in the UCC and the common law, we call it the warranty of merchantability. Warranty of merchantability says the goods will do what an average good of that type would ordinarily do in those particular circumstances. So every seller must warrant that the goods are of the same description as those goods that would ordinarily be used in a sales contract. So if that is food, that means the food is not spoiled. The food is not rotten. The food matches whatever ordinarily you would expect to receive in that transaction. So the warranty of merchantability, and this warranty of merchantability is set into every sales transaction, regardless of whether it is expressly noted or not. It is part of the sales transaction, unless specifically excluded. So that's the first type of warranty. Now, the second type of warranty is a guarantee that the goods are fit for a particular purpose that was made known to the seller at the time of the conclusion of the contract. Again, we have this same concept in the UCC. We call it the warranty of fitness for a particular purpose. What this applies to is if the buyer tells the seller, either expressly or through implication, about special concerns of the goods, and the seller promises to address those goods, then the goods, which may be useful for their ordinary purpose, must match the use in this particular case. As an example, if I had a desert racing team and I needed to buy motor oil for my desert racing vehicle. Now, the motor oil is going to have to be of a special grade, right? It's going to have to be able to handle high temperatures for extended periods of time, oftentimes in dirty or dusty environments. That's the kind of oil I need. If I make that known to the seller, the type of oil that I need, the seller has an obligation to give me oil that matches that particular purpose, the warranty of fitness for a particular purpose. And if they provide me ordinary motor oil, which is merchantable, which would be fit for the purposes ordinarily oil is used for, but it's not fit for my particular purpose, then the seller has breached the warranty of fitness for a particular purpose. The third warranty is that the goods possess the quality of goods that the seller has held out to the buyer as a sample or a model. So if you are buying textiles for something, if you are a suit manufacturer and a seller gives you a swatch of cloth and says this is what the fabric I'm going to sell you is going to resemble, the fabric that you are given must match that of the sample that was provided, the swatch of cloth. So warranty that the goods match the sample or the model. Now, buyer has obligation on delivery. The buyer has an obligation, first of all, to inspect the goods and then notify the seller of any nonconformity. So a buyer must inspect the goods, and if the goods do not conform with the contract, they must notify the seller of the nonconformity. Now, I make the point the CISG makes these periods, meaning the time for examination and then the time to provide notice. They're separate. However, in both cases, the buyer must inspect and notify within a reasonable time. Now, what is a reasonable time? It's going to depend. What is the type of good? If the goods are fresh fruit that may spoil without refrigeration, within a week, the buyer must inspect before that week is up. A buyer must inspect the goods within a reasonable time. If the goods are machine tools that aren't going to be used for 30 days, then the buyer must inspect and notify within that reasonable time period. Now, the reason that the buyer has this obligation is that the seller is going to have a right to cure any nonconformity. Now, buyer's obligation to examine the goods begins to run on delivery. And after the period for examination closes, again, the period of timely notice begins. Now, if the defect can only be discovered by using the product, again, the buyer has a reasonable period from the time that it noticed that the goods had a defect until they notify the seller. And if a buyer fails to give timely and proper notice, the buyer loses the right to assert breach of contract, even though the goods did not conform to the contract. If the buyer failed to inspect and failed to give notice of the nonconformity, the buyer loses the right to assert the breach against the seller. Now, the notice of nonconformity should be specific. The notice should state in detail exactly how the goods are nonconforming. And the reason we have this requirement is that a seller has a right to cure, but the seller doesn't know how to cure the nonconformity until it is specifically described to the seller. So the notice of nonconformity has to be specific.